Ellen DeGeneres has been exposed by even more employees. Watch the entire video because you won't believe what some of them said. And as always, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, which in many ways is kind of the point. Ellen knows that to be famous, you need to act a certain set of ways to either be loved, be controversial, or just be that dang good. She decided to take the beloved act after getting her own show on various networks, and that led to her becoming one of the most praised and fan-enjoyed shows in the entirety of television. And given some of her competition, that's not an easy thing to do. She smiled and danced and played games and had all kinds of fun with celebrities to show us just how happy and fun she was. But if you looked closely at some of those things she did on the show, she proved that while she can be fun, she's also mean and vindictive. A great example of this meanness came when she did an audience giveaway of sorts. She planted a camera in a room and told people to only take one item, which most people did. But then in one case, a woman went rogue and tried to take as much as she could. Ellen was not amused, and she went almost postal on the woman, not just calling her out in front of the crowd, but going the extra mile to berate her and then put her, quote, in jail. Justified? Yeah, but you could see the real Ellen emerge. Another curious case of Ellen being mean was when Mariah Carey came on one time, and Ellen heard rumors that she might be pregnant. Her response to this was trying to get Carey to drink some wine, which would indicate whether she was pregnant or not based on how or if she drank it. It was a rather mean trick, and yet Ellen didn't seem to care. There are other hints of this that go throughout the series. The interview with Dakota Johnson over not getting invited to a party, her insult war with Sean Hayes, that they both laughed at once over, and so on and so forth. We've seen it in fits and bursts, but now people are coming forward and saying that it's a lot more than just that. Number 4, Bodyguard. There were many hints, if you will, that Ellen was not exactly who she appeared to be, including a YouTube star in Corinne Olympios going onto the show and being almost blindsided by how cold Ellen was and how she made Corinne feel both on stage and off. That seemed to open up a lot of people's eyes, but the first real blast that Ellen got was via a person that was assigned to protect her for a big moment in her life. Tom Mazurczak said to Fox News that during his 10-year stint as a senior manager of operations for security imagery specialists, SIS, he was selected to serve as DeGeneres' executive protector at the 86th Academy Awards. The opportunity meant he'd be escorting DeGeneres, her mother, and her partner Portia de Rossi throughout the night from the red carpet to the Dolby Theater and the glamorous post-ceremony Governor's Ball. Now you'd think this would be a simple thing, right? He'd protect her, say the occasional words, night goes off great, nothing bad happens, right? Well, part of that is true, but in regards to being cordial, Ellen was apparently lacking in that department. Here's what he had to say on the matter. I'm holding their hands and walking them through individuals and large groups of people. Ellen is the one person that I've been assigned to, and I've been assigned to quite a few celebrities that has never taken the time to say hi to me, Mazurczak claimed. At the Oscars, Mazurczak said he spent a lot of time with De Rossi, who was very pleasant and carried on a conversation. It started going negatively when she introduced me to Ellen, and Ellen pretty much just gave me a side glance out of her eye and didn't even say hello or thank you for protecting my mother, my wife, and me, Mazurczak continued. It was very cold, and it was very sly, and it was actually kind of demeaning in a way that she treats people other than those who are in her circle. Now, the thing that many people noted is that this happened a while ago, and yet he just came forward in 2020. This rang odd to some, but the former protector said the recent allegations against DeGeneres made by her staff and former guest blogger Nikki DeJagger motivated him to speak his truth. It's bugged me for years, Mazurczak shared. I see this person come across as being very enlightened and positive and awesome, and everybody loves her and is in awe, and that's really not the case when you meet her in person, he went on. When you see her on TV, people fall in love with her, but it's a false facade and bravado. You start hearing these stories and I was like, man, there's gotta be more to this. She's not the person she portrays to be, that she's playing off of society. That's my opinion. His final thoughts on the matter were that Ellen really needed to drop the persona. I can absolutely see through interacting with her firsthand that she doesn't care about anybody else as long as she's getting what she wants, Mazurczak concluded. People are starting to see her true self, and that really lends to the support of what my initial thoughts of her have been over the last 6 years. That's a pretty bold statement, and yet one that seems to be backed up by many people who are starting to rise up against Ellen and her personal producers, which is horrifying in its own right, because you would expect the Ellen Show to be one of the funniest places to work on earth. Between the host, the guests, the games, the giveaways, and everything, this should be a great place to work, and Ellen should be the best boss ever. Apparently not. Number 3, the coronavirus incident. Okay, so Ellen didn't treat a bodyguard well. That's kind of mean, but that's not exactly the worst thing in the world. And that would be true if there weren't a lot of other accounts of just how bad Ellen is. Just take the recent lockdown crisis. Many of the Ellen DeGeneres show cast are not happy with how they're being treated in this pandemic lockdown world that we're living in. They want to know what's going on, why their pay isn't coming, etc. But when it comes to the staff complaints of Ellen, they go beyond the epidemic and dive into the day-to-day of how Ellen treats them on set. The various reports and people that have come forward state that it's not a great place to work in at all, which obviously could mean a lot of things to a lot of different people and raise questions like, well, is she just hard on them? Like she works them to the bone because she wants it done right. And that may be a component of it, but rather, an anonymous source that is citing her bad behavior is one who has said that when the cameras aren't rolling, Ellen treats all of her staff like peasants, which means that she herself would be the queen of everything, and that she looks down upon them and treats them like dirt. Think about that for a moment. That means that Ellen quite literally looks down at just about everyone working with her, and that they aren't worth her time, which is a striking parallel to the bodyguard that we just talked about. But wait, because there's even more here. This source went on and further noted that Ellen is known for causing all sorts of problems with the staff, so much so that sometimes they don't even get briefed as to what is going to be happening on the show, and when the staff doesn't know, that will cause problems. What's more, Ellen is apparently one to play favorites and even use that to cause tension amongst the crew, which is absolutely insane. Who does that? Who would want to create a hostile environment between the workers themselves to do what? Amuse themselves? Do an anthill situation of them getting better through conflict? It doesn't add up. Sadly though, there is still more to the tale. Her love of playing favorites will get only a few select members of the team to go to various fun events with Ellen, while the others have to do the grunt work, which is not fun, not fair, and not even that clever. Because if you have favorites, then that'll tell people it doesn't matter what they do, they won't earn privileges, and thus they won't need to work hard. Now, since this is an anonymous source, you do have to question the validity of it, but based on those who spoke with the source, they were very passionate about the bad treatment they were getting. Not to mention, as we're going to talk about soon, there have been many other reports of things like this, and add that to the bodyguard testimony, and it all lines up with the picture that people have been painting about Ellen. If this was a one-time issue, or during a period of personal insecurity for Ellen, you might be able to brush it off as one thing or another, because you could say she was having a rough go of things, and took it out on them. We've all done that before in some capacity, but this is hardly the first time that Ellen has revealed herself as a person that doesn't really care about workers. The first true incident goes all the way back to the writer's strike that happened in 2007. Yeah, she was mean even back then. In case you forgot, the strike was a way for writers to get just pay and rights for all things they do for movies, TV shows, and even talk shows like Ellen. When the strike happened, certain kinds of TV shows were forbidden to air live or continue to be made in a new capacity. This meant that talk shows like Ellen weren't supposed to be on, and thus late night TV and daytime TV took a break so that things could be worked out, more or less. Ellen did honor this agreement for a day. Yep, that's right, it was a single day, and then the next day she went and started her show up again, with the only difference being that she didn't do a monologue in honor of her writers not being there. That was a bold move and one that drew a lot of ire, because she was technically breaking the law, which ironically brings us right back to the incident with the pandemic, where there have been various reports that she's not using her long-term staff writers for the at-home show, but rather using indie writers, aka cheaper writers, and more so that she can get around employing them and other things. That's not just sad, that's mean, and very mean at that. It's both ironic and tragic that these revelations are coming out in a year where virtually everything seems to be crumbling right before our eyes. And believe it or not, we're still not done. Number 2, be kind. Ellen DeGeneres has built her worldwide multi-million-dollar brand on the motto "Be Kind," with lavish giveaways and acts of charity. This is one of the biggest reasons why Ellen is so beloved by many. She's someone who tries to take care of people and make the world a better place with the access and money that she has at her disposal. And there's no doubt in anyone's mind that Ellen does do great things for people in front of the camera. However, in contrast, behind the scenes, current and former employees on her leading daytime show say they faced racism, fear, and intimidation, meaning that in front of the camera is the best place to be, and behind the camera and off stage is the worst. That be kind bolt only happens when the cameras are on. It's all for show, one former employee told BuzzFeed News. I know they give money to people and help them out, but it's for show. Most of the former employees blamed executive producers and other senior managers for the day-to-day toxicity, but one former employee said that ultimately it's Ellen's name on the show, and she really needs to take more responsibility for the workplace environment. If she wants to have her own show and have her name on the show title, she needs to be more involved to see what's going on. One former employee said, I think the executive producers surround her and tell her things are going great, everybody's happy, and she just believes that. But it's her responsibility to go beyond that, which is very true, especially when you hear some of the stories from the employees who have been hurt in various ways by her actions and inactions, including multiple bouts of racism. One employee said that when she was hired, a senior level producer told her and another employee, oh wow, you both have box braids. I hope we don't get you confused. And at a work party, she said one of the main writers told her, I'm sorry, I only know the names of the white people who work here. And and other coworkers awkwardly laughed it off instead of coming to her defense. That's appealing in all the ways that matter. This is the year 2020 and racism is still rampant, as the recent riots and protests showed. And it's bad enough when it's dealing with people like law enforcement who should be absolutely not racist at all in the defense of others. But when it comes to the workplace, it's up to people like Ellen to make sure that these kinds of things not only never start, but are stopped if they do somehow creep in. Yet on Ellen's show, not only did that not happen, it only got worse. When the employee mentioned, before starting to speak up about the discrimination, she said all of her colleagues distanced themselves from her. Whenever I brought up an issue to my white male boss, he would bring up some random story about some random black friend that he had and how they managed to get over stuff. She said he would use his black friend as some way to say, "I understand your struggle," but it was all performative bull. The former employee said she was also called into a meeting with executive producer Ed Glavin, where she was reprimanded for her objections to the term spirit animal, asking for a raise, and suggesting employees on the show receive diversity and inclusion training. He said that I was walking around looking resentful and angry. She said, "Right, because wanting to have a fair and inclusive and non-racist workplace is totally bad and they shouldn't be angry at that." She kept what happened to her for years for a simple reason. "I feel like I'm not alone in this," she said. "We all feel this. We've been feeling this way, but I've been too afraid to say anything because everyone knows what happens when you say something as a black person. You're blacklisted." She spoke out though because she knew she needed to, and others have felt the same way. This is but one story of what was happening behind the scenes. Just one. There were several in that BuzzFeed piece that listed all sorts of horror stories. And while it's true that Ellen herself is not the one who enacted many of these things, she hired the people who did. And like that one employee said, it's her name on the brand. She's ultimately responsible for everyone under her employee, for the good and the bad. Number 1. Can Ellen recover from this? That is a question that many are asking, and many have various different answers. Some are saying that it's possible that Ellen could get cancelled for these allegations and for these negative pieces because it'll either run her reputation or it'll cause sponsors to pull out and thus lose the money-making value of the show. Others think that because Ellen has such a presence and exudes a certain amount of goodness still, that the sponsors will stay and thus she'll keep going. She obviously hasn't gotten cancelled yet, and a source close to Ellen noted that she didn't think it would escalate this far, but it did. Ironically, Ellen hasn't made any statement about these incidents. The producers of the show made one about the allegations about them, and it was as bland and PR happy as you can get. But that's all. What happens next is very important, but what exactly will happen? That's unknown. And there you have it, a look at Ellen DeGeneres and the various reports of her and her staff being very mean and downright appalling in terms of how they treat the staff and others. Can you believe that this all happens behind the scenes of the Ellen Show? Did you ever think that Ellen was kind of mean before this happened? What do you think the future of her show is? Let me know in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time on the channel.